All right, we are live. Guys, welcome back to another episode of The Deep End. As always, I'm joined by my main man, Ari, but today we have a very, very special guest. The one and only Brandon Beavis is in the building. Brandon, thanks for coming on to the show, man. We're happy to have you.
Thank you guys. This is it's an honor. I've been looking forward to it all week. So when I got the invite, put it straight on the calendar. I knew I had to put some time aside because yeah, I'm a huge fan of what you guys do here. I'm a big fan of both of you guys, as you know. So yeah, very pleasure to be on the pod here live with you guys.
Brandon, I usually say a little certain something when we get going, but I only feel that it's right that I pass it over to the man, the myth, the legend that is you to tell us all what exactly this podcast is all about and who we're powered up by.
Well, this podcast, The Deep End, is powered and brought to you by the one and only Blossom Social. Let's get that out of the way, you guys.
Let's
Hey,
go.
I didn't come on here to do a big plug session. I came on here to chat with you fellas, but yeah, I mean, as a quick backdrop, I'm sure the regular viewers are well familiar, but when I saw your guys' pod, just to lay the context, I knew immediately that we wanted to get involved because I think there was something about the energy of this podcast, and I think it's more so the energy of you guys that really stuck with me. There's this calming presence that you guys have, and obviously there's
Wow.
an immense amount of education that I think you guys share each and every week. But what I found jumped out to me the most was listening to your guys' pod here. Uh, it really like inspires, I think, investors. There's an inspirational aspect to either invest, talk about investing, just kick up that discussion, and I think that's ultimately what we value here at Blossom. That's one of our foundational principles is getting the financial literacy out and kicking up that discussion. So it was a no-brainer for us to get involved with you guys, and I hope the audience is not sick and tired of hearing about it, because I really hope and believe truly that they enjoy the platform that we've built. So yeah, I'll say it once more. Yeah, the deep end powered by Blossom. But that aside, let's get into the conversation, you guys.
Well,
Ryan, I almost think we can end it right there with all those kind words.
yeah. All
Just
right,
call
guys.
it.
We'll see you in the next one.
I mean it. I really mean it. And I've known Ryan a lot longer than I've known you, Ari, because Ryan, I think we go back a number of years when we
Yeah.
first started our YouTube channels. I've been following along with your journey, and since day one, you've been one of the one of the ones that I find myself watching on a regular basis, because I very much just enjoy what you stand for as a person, and
Oh,
the energies and values that I think you portray. I think is very much aligned with what I try to do. And Ari, as I'm getting to know you more, hey, nothing but good things to say as well.
well, that truly means a lot, man. Like, that's probably the nicest compliment that anyone could give me. And I will say, kind of to your point, and just this is kind of broadly speaking about any finance creator. We're not always going to get things right, so obviously don't do the things that we do just because we do them. But I think if nothing else, that's one of the major my big motivators for having the channel and having these conversations and just putting everything out there is just to, if nothing else, just to inspire people to get started with investing and to make this decision to start putting money away for their financial future. I figure if any of our gibberish or any of my gibberish here on the internet can have some sort of impact on someone and make them get started with this, I figure that's definitely a net positive. So if nothing else, that's what I'm here to do, and I think that's what we're all here to do at the end of the day. So thank you, man. It means a lot.
Look, Ryan, I know you're wise in what's and hows, but, I really never took the time to really ask Brandon a big question, which is like, why'd you get started investing and what really inspired you? Because for anyone who doesn't know, Brandon also has quite a channel and quite a background. And so I actually kind of want to start right there and just ask you directly, like, what's your background? Why'd you get started investing? What was inspiring for you?
Hey, real quick, sorry to cut you off before you started, Brandon. I just want to put this out there to the live chat before we get into the deep end on this origin story. If you guys have any investing questions, anything you want us to cover here in the conversation, drop them in the live chat. We'll revisit all this stuff later in the video, but I just wanted to put that out there. So Brandon, I'll pass the floor to you. Sorry, man.
No worries. No, I think I have somewhat of a unique story. Not somewhat. I know a very unique story because unlike a lot of people who get into investing later in life and there's some sort of event or some realization that hey, I got to be doing this. I've been investing for as long as I can remember. So Ari, to answer your question, I started investing when I was 10 years old.
Wow.
Like by choice?
Somewhat by choice. So I guess you don't know
Okay.
the story here, Ryan, either. But yeah, the full
No, I
backstory.
don't.
May I
Father,
just ask, do you currently hold the regret that you wish you started even younger?
Man,
Is that still applicable for you?
for me, no. That's one of the ones where, yeah, all those cliche sayings, that one does not apply to me because, yeah, unfortunately, well, fortunately, no. But yeah, I grew up in a household. My father, who is actually runs the channel with me, so we are essentially co-hosts on our channel. He spent about a 27-year career, I think it was, in wealth management. So he was an investment advisor his whole life, ended up becoming a portfolio manager in the later parts of his career. So yeah, pretty much as soon as I can remember, and I do remember the day. So there's a fun story. I remember the day I was 10 years old, and he came home with a piece of paper, printed out sheet of paper for me and my brother. He sat us down, and at the time I had no clue what that paper was. I mean, think about this: are you 10 years old? You don't know what the heck you're doing with anything. But he'd essentially screened out a bunch of stocks that a young kid would know. So the McDonald's, the Disney's, the Walmarts, just your typical blue chip stocks. He had a huge list of them. It had all sorts of details on it, like the PE ratio, the share price, any relevant information that a stock screener would provide. But what he had me and my brother do was go down and with a pen circle any names that jumped out to us. And the two stocks that I ended up ultimately leaning on was McDonald's, because as a young kid, loved getting my Happy Meals, my cheeseburgers, that type of thing. Always a treat when I got to go to McDonald's. And then Coca-Cola was the other stock that again logically jumped out to me. And what happened was, at least here in Canada, you can set up what's called a trust for account. So I'm not exactly sure in the States how simple it is to get your kids going with investing. I know it's a super common question we get. Obviously, you have like the government structured plans here in Canada to put towards education, but you can also set up what's called an trust for account, which is a typical taxable account where the parent essentially manages the account, but it's in trust in the kid's name. And then when you become the age of majority, when you become an adult, you take over that account. All that to say, I actually bought my first two stocks when I was 10 years old. And I held them pretty much my entire life up until about a year ago, and we can get into that later. But yeah, my start with investing was that young. I also bought mutual funds at the time, so keep in mind this wasn't even, I think ETFs back in the day were certainly less popular than they are today. So it was mutual funds, and then my two individual positions. And I think the concept there that my dad was trying to instill in me was, from a very early age, when you are getting involved in the stock market, you are truly becoming in many fashions like a part owner of the business, a fractional owner, but thinking about stocks in the sense of not just a ticker or not just an opportunity to make money, but every time we go through the McDonald's drive-through and we order a Happy Meal, or anytime you're having a sip of Coke Zero or whatever that may be, you are contributing to this overall business, and you actually have a piece of the pie. So yeah, my money mindset is again quite unique, but it was ingrained for me with a very early age, and I've been investing ever since, and I plan to invest for the rest of my life, really. And that's my backstory.
I gotta say, we got a comment already there that's coming in, and it's saying, "Wow, at 10 years old, I was killing insects." Ryan, what were you doing at 10?
I was still doing those. I don't know about killing insects. I still had my fair share of things. It's just the investing was there, but
Yeah, I definitely wasn't thinking about this stuff at 10 years old. Although I will say, Brandon, I did get a similar start to investing as you did. So here in the States, we have something similar. We have custodial accounts, which are basically parent managed accounts.
yeah,
And for the education side of things, we have 529 plans. So I got my start with investing when I was probably 12 or 13 or somewhere in that range. My parents set up a custodial account for me. And so that was pretty much like kind of my entry to all this. But even at that age, I didn't understand it. I definitely didn't get it. And I wasn't taught for sure that about, businesses or stocks being slivers of businesses versus just these things that go up and down. I had no idea that it was like that. Obviously, being that young, you don't really have much of an interest in it. And so for me, it was kind of like from that point forward, every birthday, every Christmas, every Arbor Day, anytime there was like a gift that needed to be given, it wasn't like it wasn't like a Grand Theft Auto, or it wasn't a skateboard or anything like that. I was
50
getting
bucks into
money.
the brokerage account. Yeah.
Exactly, man. I was getting money from my Charles Schwab account. And you know what's funny? And so, actually, taking a step back, it's always been a running joke in my family, because it's like, getting that envelope with the basically picture of the check that's being sent to Schwab. We'd always give my parents a hard time, like, great, Merry Christmas. Um, and they'd said, you're going to thank us someday. You're going to be so glad that we did this for you. And someday you'll understand. And it didn't hit me until I was probably like 25 or 26 years old, when it finally started to click and I finally caught that bug. And it was like, dang, I get it now. I totally get it. And I'm so glad that I had this started for me. And nowadays, it's a total 180. Nowadays, that's like my favorite gift to receive. Still for my birthday, still for my Christmas, I get a check for Charles Schwab. And it's like the thing I look forward to the most. And it's just so funny. Yeah, life's funny. It definitely, if you would have told me 5 or 6 years ago, or however long ago, that I would be, number one, interested in stocks and investing, but number two, like talking about it on the internet for fun and also for a job, like I would have thought you were crazy. I just never would have imagined it. And but it's such a cool thing. It's such a positive thing to get into, and it's something that everyone needs to do. And like you said, it's one of those things that you can do for the rest of your life, which is one of the cool things. I think we're all pretty fortunate to have this as a hobby.
Well, what I'll chime in there just to add a little bit on top of that is, it's funny. I mean, you understand the compound. We all understand how compounding can work for you, and how getting early is so impactful for your future life. It's not that my brokerage account is any larger than the average person. So it's not that I have more money because I started early. But what I think was the most important value that was instilled was those early habits, right? And
Yeah.
just the way we view money. Because one of the biggest questions I get, and I'm not sure if you guys get that either on your channels, but is from parents who are saying, what are the best tips and trips, things I can instill in my kid? And it's such a desire for them to pass down and break those cycles of financial illiteracy, where all those little tips and tricks you can do go a long way. And it's the habit formation that you can do at a very early age, and just shaping the money mindset that I think has the biggest long-term impact, because it's just the way you view money. You don't have those biases and those hesitations and flaws that a lot of people end up developing
Yeah.
over life.
Well, that's a good question, man. And I wanted to ask you
There we
about
go.
that because, yeah, I mean, we can see it up on the screen. Damien wants to know, how would you teach a kid about investing and get them interested? And that's something I actually wanted to ask you about, because I know you're a dad yourself. You actually have I think you have two kids. One's a recent newborn, so congratulations. But as you know, too, like in the next probably 2 months, I'll be a dad myself, and it's something I've already started to think about. I'm sure a lot of it is like, you have these good habits, and so you're kind of leading by example, and kids can see that because they're sponges and they see what their parents do, and it's learned behavior. But I don't know, is there anything and you have young kids. I think your oldest daughter, she's still a toddler,
She's
if
definitely a
I,
toddler. She's barely a
yeah.
toddler.
So
Three and a half.
pro-
Yeah.
probably still
But
too young
she
to,
learned Brandon's lesson. She started investing.
She's she started
She's
investing.
invested already.
She's pulling money. I had in my backpack. I had a bunch of coins. Actually, from a trip. I got back from Taiwan last year, and I had a bunch of foreign coins. And she went digging through my backpack, and the first thing she said to me this morning is, "Daddy, you have so much money in your backpack." There's probably 15 random coins worth no more than 50 cents there. But um, let me let me share, I guess, some of the things that I'm doing, because even at 3.5 years old, there are things, Ryan. First of all, super excited for you. That's obviously a
thanks, man.
massive life event incoming.
And just so you know, that's what's keeping me from the Blossom tour this year.
I know
Next year
that.
I'm in, but I know, dude, I keep escaping getting I keep somehow I keep not being able to meet up with you guys, and it really bums me out, cuz I look forward to the day when we get to hang out in person. Anyway, enough of that.
I think you got a valid excuse this time around.
Okay. Well, as long as you're not mad at me, that's all I care about.
I could never be mad at you, Ryan. I think at 3.5 years old, yeah, it's still a little bit too early to be instilling those investing principles, but definitely around the house, the concept of money, and the concept of, yeah, money, currency, the fact that you need to go out and buy things and earn money when you want to go get an ice cream cone. Those are the things that were very early, just an active and open conversation in our household. I'll give an example. We go to Starbucks typically every morning before work to get my morning coffee. And what Ava's been doing recently is she has her little pouch of coins in the back of the car, and she knows the difference between a toonie and a loony. And these are our currency here in Canada, you guys. So she knows you got the big ones, the little ones, and yeah, if the coffee costs $2, $3, she'll hand me some money, and I'll literally hold it out the window, pretend to make the transaction, and give it back to her. Little things like that, I think, are just forming that foundation of becoming familiar and I guess comfortable with the concept of money. I still have a few years to go before I start implementing the investing tactics.
Yeah.
Before I can confidently share any tips that are successful or not successful. But yeah, I think it's just it comes down to just having that open candor, which is something I think maybe traditionally was less the case, where parents were a little more reserved about sharing numbers or sharing the realities of life and costs. I know my
Yeah.
parents didn't really talk to me much about the mortgages and what a monthly expense looks like to run a household. In my perspective, I think as soon as the kids of age, those are conversations that I think are valuable. Unless maybe there's situations where you're in such a crummy position where you don't want to, worry your child or make them feel
Yeah.
like they have something to panic about. But if you're in a situation where you're getting by, I definitely feel nowadays the conversation is much more open about money, and I think that just is a step in the right direction.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
It's so
Go ahead, Ari.
interesting, Brandon, you say that, man, because I'm thinking back to my childhood, and a lot of my lessons from childhood have actually been like how not to approach a situation, which I almost think is more beneficial in some sense.
Mm.
And I mean, both have their benefits, but I didn't get, and my dad had no idea. Like he worked for J&J, and I had an affinity for J&J, as everybody knows. Really, because my dad, he invested, his earnings into J&J, and he was an executive there, and so that's where his money was for a long while. And then it was mutual funds and the money market. I just remember hearing often, you have to get invested into the money market. You got to get your money moving, working for you. No one ever told me anything else. And I actually, at a young age, going to my cousins, I had an uncle who worked at Fidelity as a bonds trader. And he then managed some funds there, $25 billion fund. And he actually did something similar. He would always come in, the living room with a newspaper with all the quotes and tickers. And he would sit down and say, does anything look interesting to my cousin? And I would always be like, what is all this? But no one ever said anything to me. And so when I kind of, think about and project out to a future building my family, it's like, I just want to have them active in some capacity. I like what you just shared, actually, which I want to double down on. Can you help instill healthy money habits and how to look at money in a healthy way? I think so many people have a poor perception on money, how to use it, what they should do with it, what they maybe shouldn't do with it, or just it's almost like, this, and it happened to me outright, right? Like my family are a little bit broken growing up. And so I was so afraid not to have money that I did the worst possible thing ever, right? Which was hoard it and just try to keep it and protect it. And I never allowed it to grow until much later. And by much later, I want to say early 20s, which isn't crazy. It's like much later. A lot of people get started in 30s, 40s. But I almost think it's what you shared. It's like start developing those healthy money habits young and know that your kids are always watching you. How do you talk about money? How do you spend it? One thing I will say, my dad always did say to me, we would go to the toy store and he would always say, Ari, do you need that toy or do you want that toy? And at least I had a distinction between needs and wants, and that was very helpful.
So true. I'll actually add one thing that just popped to mind. This was I guess an actually actionable tip that are you guys hearing me fine? I'm having some technical difficulties.
I hear you
hearing
okay.
Hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw a comment. I'm gonna try and speak a little closer to the mic. One of the actionable tips that my dad did, very similar to what you mentioned, Ari, was we had a system, and we called it at the time long-term savings. I hated long-term savings as a kid, so Now I love it, but at the time we had a system where if I wanted to go out and buy a want, as you speak of, right, and then that'd be Pokemon cards, a scooter, whatever that may be, and we had a whole ledger. Anytime we went out and spent money, we kept a log of it. I had to take 50% of the purchase price. So let's take a scooter's $80, $100, whatever it is. I had to essentially save up, from my allowance. It's probably allowance I made at the end of the day. Got a little bit every whatever it was, doing chores around the house. I had to take 50% of that purchase price and sock that away into my long-term savings, which was the brokerage account that I had set up. So a purchase for $100 actually cost me $150, and it really, I mean, that's I think a valuable, very early lesson in life is that when you have money, that money is not there for every last dollar to be spent on the wants. It doesn't mean that you can't have wants in life, and I think that's a huge distinction. Is that, like you said, you can also go down the other end of the spectrum where it's you don't live a crappy life because you're so worried about saving every last dollar. And I certainly don't agree with that, but finding that healthy balance where you can have the things you want but also ensuring that you're prioritizing savings along the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one that just popped to mind, and shout out to my dad because that was, I think, a good one.
Yeah, shout out to Mark. It's funny, we were kind of talking about this I think last week. People who aren't in investing, it's just we're talking about balance, and it seems like people who aren't investors are on like one end of the spectrum where they don't do a good job of having the balance in the sense that they spend most of their money. But then we investors typically are on the complete opposite side of that, and we don't have balance in the sense that we maybe save, if there is such a thing, we maybe save and invest too much of our money. I think this was last week we were talking about it, and so I think finding that balance is an important thing for both people to have. But I will say, to the credit of us investors, I think our lack of balance is a bit more productive than the other side. But certainly biased in saying that. But I agree, man. It is a tough thing to balance. Living in the moment and for today and doing things right now. Like Ari, he's in Albania right now on vacation, living it up. Hopefully it feels like vacation, but he's out there living it up,
amazing.
spending some of his money, some of that money that he'd otherwise put into his tech fund or the S&P 500. He's using that for experiences today. So you have to balance living for today and doing those things while also being mindful of the future. And obviously we don't know what's going to happen, but barring any crazy events, you'll be around for a long, long time. And so you need to be mindful of that future version of yourself too. And that's easier said than done for both types of people, investors and non-investors.
Look, I want to say I'm not just in Albania. The place I chose to stay was actually, it's like a spa. And the reason being is because I don't, when I vacation, I'm still working, right? I'll still get work done. But if I'm going to treat myself, I'd much rather earn the vacation, if you will. I'd rather earn that time that I really get to treat myself. And then when I treat myself, I'm going to go big to really enjoy it. And so I think like right now, it's like I can look to my right, beautiful, wow, actually beautiful sunset happening right now.
Sees a mermaid out there.
But and in this place, it's amazing. But I got to be honest, I was not always like this. And it took a lot of work for me to strike that balance and really get a grip on a healthy outlook on money. And a lot of that for me, if I'm really being honest, came from like childhood wounds and trauma of like, again, that dire need to have money and to never share it and to make it and just hoard it. And I was doing some pretty crazy things. I mean, really, even like going out with friends, it was like, whatever. I'd rather blow off good friends because they were going to go out and spend the money. It's like, no, you could go spend money. You just don't have to do it every night, And I think, again, that there has to be that balance that's there. And if you don't have that balance, I'd actually love to know in the comments what some of you may be experiencing now or what you have experienced in terms of that balance. Because Ryan, you're absolutely right, man. I mean, it runs thick in the investment community on both ends. Which one is healthier? I don't know. It's like, hopefully us now.
I like to think so. I like to think so, man. I feel like I was gonna say something just now. Oh yeah, I will say too, kind of going back to something we were talking about earlier, it does seem like there are more and more people just talking about all of this stuff, whether it's investing or just how to handle your money. One of the things you hear most commonly is it's, people feel, I don't know if cheated is the right word, but they feel maybe underprepared to navigate a lot of this stuff. And you'll always hear they never taught this in school, which is true. But I think it is so cool to live in a time where people, number one, can get access to all this information just with like the click of a few buttons, but also can take matters into their own hands. And Brandon, you might know this better than I do, but as time is going on, I'm kind of getting the sense that it's starting to, I don't want to say become more mainstream because it's always been something everyone has to do, but I feel like you are starting to see more and more and more people getting into investing and looking at it as kind of this fun and cool thing to do. Obviously, like I said, better than anyone, there's a huge community around investing, but I am starting to see the conversation around it, especially amongst younger people. And actually, dude, starting to do those portfolio reviews has opened up my eyes to that even more, where there are kids 13, 15, 17, 18 starting to get into investing, and it's starting to be looked at as, this is cool. This is not boring. This is not lame or stuffy. This is like pretty freaking cool. Have you noticed that too? Or am I tripping on that? Maybe I am, partly because I spend so much time with my head in this and that's all I see, but I'm starting to notice that shift.
I notice it as well. And like, yeah, you use the word cool. That's exactly how I would phrase it as well. It's kind of cool to be an investor. And certainly you're seeing them younger and younger. I was just trying to think on the spot why that's the case, because I don't know if I have a great answer for you. Maybe one of the things, I mean, could be completely wrong here, but is when I think about 10 years ago, 15 years ago, right? A lot of the investing was done via the professionals. So for example, you go to the bank or you have your professional money manager or maybe your family's advisor they've worked with for X number of years. And I'll tell you, as a younger kid, there's nothing exciting about sitting down with your parents' financial advisor and letting them go through a bunch of fact sheets. That's not fun. But if very possibly as technology has evolved and as these DIY brokerages have gotten more popular, and then the Robinhoods and the Schwab, like, you know what I mean? Being able to take matters into your own hands, that could be, again, I could be completely wrong here. I don't have any facts, but that definitely could be a big shift that's contributing to it, because it's a lot more fun when you can, pick the stocks you want or go research an ETF and have some element of control and visibility on your portfolio than maybe you couldn't have had 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, totally, man. And go ahead, RA. Sorry, man.
No, I was going to say, I don't want to sound too confident and cocky over here saying this. So,
it's all you. That, but you're the reason.
I just want to say, actually, what Brandon and all of his colleagues have created, I think, is a big reason that made investing really cool, because Blossom in and of itself is really a vehicle for everyday Joe Schmo investors to get together and work together towards a common goal, which is, really financial freedom. That's what we're all after. And I think we were so separated before. Yes, technology played a role, but let's just take like Robinhood came out. Okay, we weren't all connected because of Robinhood, but you start getting an application like Blossom, this place where we can all connect, and we have synergy now, and we're all buzzing with the excitement of financial freedom and our goals and pumping each other up. I'll say this, I have not seen or been active in a community that has been so loving and embracing of all investors like I see in Blossom. I've been on X, we're on YouTube, obviously, all three of us. And sometimes you get these, I don't know, the hate comments. And if you're this investor, you're not friends with those investors. You don't get that in Blossom. It's just like, oh, you got points on the board. We're there for you. Let's all win together. And so my answer to this actually is that we have communities like Blossom today. And I think that gives us a lot of power, all of us as investors, whether we're new, experienced, if we're connecting with one another, we're basically telling Wall Street right now that we're powerful because we're in numbers, and we now have the say. And so that's what I'll say with that. I don't know if you guys agree with that, disagree, or what your thoughts are there.
I like it. I like the thought. I would disagree. I mean, I would push back. I mean, it's probably not because of Blossom, but I feel like Blossom does take that movement that I think is happening and take it to the next level. So I'd love to think that's the case, but I think one of the things is like, we think back to COVID, and I'm sure this is something we're all well versed with the GameStop saga. And I remember, I mean, it's just funny. This goes back, what is it, 5 years now? But I remember going through Reddit and just refreshing the feed to see what was happening during some of those days, and it was just incredible. Incredible, and also I would say, fun, but also possibly damaging to some new investors who likely are buying in meme stocks and YOLOing in at the wrong times. I think what's just a quick message as to why, what's unique about Blossom is, like you said it there, it's a group of people striving for financial independence, and really with that long-term focus in mind, which is interesting because most communities and most, I guess, just attention that is grabbed on the internet nowadays, whether it's a YouTube video and you're using some clickbait title or thumbnail, whether it's a Discord community, whatever that may be, they almost always go down the route of how can I make money quick? Like, what's this, a get rich quick scheme, or what's the hot trending stock or investment or meme stock that I can get into now? And I say, like, all things considered, obviously the platform's grown a lot, and we really feel the movement is here. What I'm most proud about is that we have people like yourselves who are, yourselves, and then the entire community who is this, they're in it for the long haul. And that's like a non-sexy, it's very unsexy to talk about, Buffett foundational principles that you hear here and there, and dollar cost averaging. Like these are not the things that sell online, yet we've managed to find those people and build a community of them. So that financial independence, like you said, getting around those people, I think is very, very powerful. And funny enough, some of my favorite posts on Blossom are seeing the community members hitting milestones. So my portfolio just hit 100K, or I just earned my first $1,000 in dividends. It's extremely inspiring and encouraging to see others winning around you, like you said, regardless of strategy or style. But I think that's something we're really proud about, and we aim
And
to
I think
keep the
I think
case.
it's like, some people some people on Blossom don't like to see all the milestones and all the updates. But I
I do.
will say, like, I will say I think that's one of the most important things to show, because you're right. This stuff is not sexy. Okay, it's not fast. It's not easy. It's not supposed to be, and that's what everyone doesn't want to hear. But I do think that seeing those milestones and sharing those milestones is just evidence that, okay, even though it's kind of grueling sometimes and you have to be patient, it is worthwhile, because if you stick with it and just stay consistent, this is what can happen. You can reach $100,000. You can hit your first $1,000 in dividends. And the crazy thing about investing, or the cool thing about it, is that it's one of those things that just gets better the longer that you do it, and it's obviously human nature to want to look for, I don't want to say want to look for shortcuts. It's human nature to want what you want and want it right now. But I think investing is a great, and that's why, people speculate, and that's where that's partly why there will always be a GameStop or an AMC. There's always going to be stuff like that. But I think being able to show a different side of it, and showing that it really does all come back to having long-term, thinking about it from a long-term perspective and not trying to take the shortcut. I think that whether the easy way or the hard way, that is a lesson, a timeless lesson that everyone's going to come back to. They'll either have to learn it the easy way or the hard way. Like I said, probably a lot of them the hard way, unfortunately. But
Can I share something? Right? Yeah. Sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I was gonna share. I want to share one of the most eye-opening. I would actually say probably the most eye-opening event. I wouldn't call it an event, but I guess perspective changes that I had when I was working with my dad. So as a quick background, I spent 4 years working with my father. I actually got my license when I was 20. So here in Canada, I worked at his firm, and one of the biggest eye openers for me was I remember looking at some of his clients' accounts, right? And you see the dollar figures, up in many cases, some of them in the seven figures, right? Oh, this client has 2.2 mil or 1.5 mil, big numbers for me at the time as a young 20-year-old. And I remember sitting down with my dad and asking, like, Dad, how did this family or this person, build such a large portfolio? And I'm asking, did they sell a business? Were they like dentists? Were they doctors? Like, how does one get that? And, for a lot of these clients, my dad had worked with them for 25 years, like literally from their inception, starting from when they just started investing all the way through to, maybe retirement or later in life. And I remember him telling me, like, this couple or this client here, they're just your everyday people. And they've just been super, super consistent over the years. And what I think was so eye opening was, we obviously had the records, and you could go back and see how their account has compounded over the years, like over, let's say, the course of 2.5 decades in some cases. And it's not that someone had a super high income. It's not that they went out and sold a farm or a business or had a huge inheritance. They just stuck to it. And, it's like you said, Ryan, investing, and like it's so hard to understand how compounding can work for you when you haven't seen the other side. When you just hear about it, all this hoopla, like, oh, you just got to invest and keep your money in there. If you don't see the end result, it's very hard for your brain to quantify that. And I just remember that being such an eye-opening moment for me, where these are just your random everyday couple that has just been diligent and saved, and being able to essentially reverse engineer that was enough to click in my head that, holy shit, this works, right? And it's like you said, all those little milestones that you see, I think those are little encouragement, little proof cases of, hey, we're on this journey together, and it's going to take time, but we're going to get there.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I just yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, I was on that just before I jumped on the plane. I wrote a Blossom post, and I actually had I created the avatar of an investor who starts investing at 40, because that would be pretty late, right? Most would say, I got started too late. Okay, how old are you? 40. And I just did about 10% on average returns per year over the next 25 or so years to retirement, 20 years. And you will still end up in that 7-figure club. And I think, to your exact point, sometimes things are so simple that we often find that simplicity too hard to believe. And so we don't even get started, because there's no way something can be that simple.
Brandon just posted about this too. It is simple, but it's not easy. And I'm actually glad you cut me off a few moments ago, because I was totally losing my point, but I found it again. So thank you. And that's, by the way, that's a regular occurrence here in the deep end. But the point that I was going to try and make is investing is a good vehicle to learn the timeless lesson that no matter what you want, you can't take shortcuts. No matter what you want out of life, it's something that you have to be disciplined and working towards, and consistent. And it's going to take time, and it's going to have its ups and downs. I think investing is such a great teacher of that. And it's not a difficult concept to wrap your head around. It's pretty simple to understand in nature, but it's not easy to execute.
Facts.
100%.
But it is worth it.
I always go back to asking the why. Like, I'm fascinated with the psychology of why, right? And why do we think that is? Like, for me, at least these days, how I operate, and maybe it's because I've had some things happen to me, earlier on in my early 20s, where there were missed opportunities, and I can look back and be like, man, you really dropped that ball. I use the term drop the ball a lot. So, man, you really dropped that ball. And now today, I don't even think twice about simplicity. I'm like, oh, it's that simple. I just have to wake up every day. I created a post today, waking up at 5 a.m. It's like, oh, if I just wake up every day at 5 a.m., I'm going to get like 2 or 3 more hours of work done in comparison to everybody else. And that means, like, I'm basically, you start to multiply that out, right? Now you're compounding workload. And what people call luck, I'm like, I hate that. I'm like, it's not luck. It's just hard work. And hard work is going to show up every single day. And that comes down to investing. that person who's going to be like, I'm not going to invest because I don't have $500 or $1,000 or, $20,000 already. It's like, yeah, but you have $1 today. And that dollar, over the span of time, you're going to compound that baby. It's why do we have to think that way? I'm fascinated what you guys think about the why we think this way, why we behave this way, and I don't want to say anti-simplicity, but like, what's our thing with simplicity? We can't get it.
It's just it's easy to take the easy way out. I think that's what it boils down to. It's hard to stick with something for so long. And yeah, along the way you see the growth, you do see it working, but when you constantly have your head in it, it feels slow, feels like it's just ticking up one notch at a time, and you've got countless notches to go. And it's just not an easy thing to sit through, I think, you know what I mean? And so I think it's just easier to to avoid it altogether. So that's my take. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I don't know.
I have a theory as well. So I almost view investing like somewhat of this bell curve, in the sense of there's like a zone where you need to be in, and then there's like a nice to have, and then there's also a lot of no-go zones, a lot of red zones. And I don't know if this boils down, to answer your question, Ari, to ego or just human psychology of wanting to think we know more than we do, or to, yeah. I think that's what it boils down to, is us as human beings, is this desire to think we know more, or to be the smartest person in the room, speaking broadly. Where investing, I think it's very interesting, is I believe going from 0 to 1, I mean, it takes a certain level of knowledge, right? You need to spend a bit of time, and whether it's watching YouTube videos or doing some books or some sort of education, you got to go from I know nothing to I know something. And then from there, you're kind of in the green zone. And like you said, it can be so simple. I mean, if we look at my portfolio right now, it's 97% ETFs. I know a lot of investors who they go their whole lives and careers dollar cost averaging into the S&P, or they buy a NASDAQ fund, or they buy some all world fund, and that's the one fund they own, and they go in and they can stay consistent on that. They can do very, very well for themselves. But the analogy of this bell curve is that investing, the deeper and deeper you go, the deep end, I think it can
happy you said that. I was about to say it.
There becomes, I think that there can become a point of almost, I don't know if diminishing returns is the right word, but there's many, many rabbit holes that one could go down, and there's almost like a danger zone, right? There's like, you know nothing, or you know too much. And there's a sweet spot in between where, again, I think the interesting part is each investor and where their desires are at and where they are in life, they find that sweet zone for them. But it's like it's very easy to teeter either knowing too little or maybe knowing too much, and it does a little more harm than good for you.
Have you seen that bell curve meme? Do you know what I'm talking about? It's where, so like on one side of the bell curve, you have the noob, the person who's just getting into it, they know nothing. Then at the top of the bell curve, you've got this guy, he's kind of like freaking out because he's gone into all these deep rabbit holes. He's like knowing too much. And then on the other side of the bell curve, it goes back down. You have like the sage and the know nothing person who just knows the basics. They're at the same level of the bell curve.
Yeah.
And so what it tries to explain is, and to your point, is that you can go into too many rabbit holes, and too much information is a real thing. And the more you know and the more you experience, the more you learn to just stick to the basics, I think, is the point of it. And I'll make a reference to, or I'll compare it to like working out, for example. So you first get into it. Wouldn't be an episode of The Deep End if we didn't do this. But when you first get into it, you do the basics.
You know how to skin a cat at this point, right?
You do the bench press, you do the squat, you do your pull-ups, you do your deadlifts, you do the main lifts. But then you get deeper and deeper into it, and you start trying to do all these crazy exercises. It's like, trying to do like hip thrusts on the hamstring raise, or just, doing crazy things. It's like, trying to get some sort of edge out of it. And that's the person at the top of the bell curve doing all this nonsense. But then, you spend
Ryan,
a longer time.
Think about you maybe like 2 years ago, hip thrusting.
Man, it is a an unavoidable part of the journey, let me tell you. But then once you get to the other side of the bell curve, and you spend a longer amount of time in it, you learn the basics are really all you need. You don't need to overcomplicate it beyond the things that just work. And I think that's certainly true with investing. Yeah, it's good to know about the Sortino ratios and, inverse leverage. I don't know. It's good to, I guess, be aware of that stuff, but you don't need everything. The basics over a long period of time paired with consistency and discipline tend to do just fine.
It's often said that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? And I actually don't agree with that. I don't like that. I think if you're the smartest person in the room, it's only you subjectively thinking you're the smartest person in the room. And perhaps you can actually learn something from literally everybody in that room. And the more I think like that, and hence like Masters of the Market is the perfect example. Here I was, when I first started my investment journey, with dividend investing and then dividend growth investing, even so. But as Brandon shared, the more you've been investing, you've gravitated towards ETFs. I found the exact same thing. I'm like, wow, it's actually so simple that if I just collect two baskets really and focus on just two baskets, Ryan already shared them, the S&P and a tech fund, I'll be killing it. And I'm actually seeing crazy results from it. And so I'm just like, where did I learn all that really was from all of you out there talking to me. And that's why I love Masters of the Market. Like for myself, I just shut up. I'm like, let me just ask a question and let this investor speak. And then at the end of that, I really took a lot in. That's why I get frustrated in a sense that when I see comments and people are like, oh, this guy's an XYZ investor, I already tuned out. I'm like, you missed the point. Like you completely missed the point. The day trader could give you something as equally as the dividend investor and the, whatever investor. We're all offering insights, and there's keys and wisdom in everything that everybody says.
Let me share something that I found was super interesting finding in my life. So for about basically my entire adult life, I managed a portfolio of individual stocks. So resembling a lot more like Ryan. And I think actually, Ryan, we follow a lot of similar companies, and I'm a big fan of what you invest in.
Thanks, dude.
And yeah, nice picks. And in
Secure.
It was just about a year ago that I made this full-on transition to like a fully passive ETF investing strategy. Literally wiped my whole portfolio and went with essentially 100%, let's just call it 100% ETFs. And my entire life had this misconception that, being an ETF investor was like boring, it's just being an ETF investor. What I'll say now, a year into it, is that I don't feel any less of an investor investing in ETFs. It's different. The stuff I spend day to day, it's not as much individual companies I'm looking at or the earnings reports, doing the research on individual stocks, which I spent my adult life doing. That's what I did actually for a career. So I love doing that. But I just found new ways to focus my attention, new areas to focus on, and I don't feel any less of an investor. And it's like you talked about, Ari. It was speaking with other people and seeing how engaged other people are and how big an element of investing is in their life. And they're doing it with a simple 1, 2, 3 fund portfolio. Though that was very, very eye-opening to me. And yeah, it's just another one of those big unlocks in my life that more recently I've uncovered. But yeah, I feel no less of an investor, even though my portfolio is 99% simpler than it was before.
See, Brandon, I found myself a Ryan. And so like I get to jump on with Ryan every week. I hope Ryan doesn't change his strategy because he still makes me talk about individual stocks. But I love what you just shared. It's like you are seeing that power of the simplicity of those 2 fund or 3 fund portfolios. It's like, yeah, I could pour in all this research, but I could also just buy these baskets and put my attention elsewhere and still reap amazing results. And because I love to talk about individual stocks, like, again, I found myself a Ryan, right? And it's like I found someone, and even if Ryan does, whatever your strategy changes or evolves into, it's like we still, all 3 of us, have an innate love for investing and understanding businesses. And I think that's at the core root of it, which is amazing. But I found the same thing, the exact same thing. And over the last week or so, I've been thinking a lot. I've already told everybody last week that my strategy moving forward is going to be a heavy focus on just two funds. And I'm like, okay, if the heavy focus is there, I keep calling, United Health my big loser. I'm like, why even have a big loser, right? Like, what's the point? So just to let everybody know now, it's like, that's now the question. It's like, maybe it's a two fund portfolio. I'm going to evolve again. And that's just cool because again, I've learned from everybody else, and it's only helped me from here. And I've been focusing my attention in other areas that honestly I love. I love freeing up some time, but still getting my head in the news with the companies I love.
Yeah. I think the cool thing about both you guys is that even though you are the majority in ETFs, you still allow yourself some room to scratch that itch with individual companies. Brandon, I think you maybe just have one company right now, maybe two. I know
I think
you
a
have.
couple, a couple.
Yeah.
Which
So
ones are they?
My two individual stocks is Lockheed Martin. So that stock I actually nibbled a little bit more on. So that's one of my all-time favorite companies, as controversial as it may be. And I own a small cap, like a local company here that's actually based out of Vancouver. So that's
Oh,
more
that's cool.
my fun stock. Yeah.
So, and this question goes out to both you guys. So I would imagine, because the bulk of your portfolio is in ETFs and you want it that way, I would imagine you're probably a bit more strict with letting individual companies in your portfolio than maybe you otherwise would be if you were more into individual companies, right? So the
Absolutely.
question is like, what does it take for you to be seriously interested enough in a company to want to pull the trigger on it? Like what makes it better than just investing in ETFs or just, defaulting to that? Do you know what I'm
Let,
saying?
let me chime in quickly, Ari, just before I forget my point. In my case, Ryan, super good question. I mean, if you look at my portfolio, my Lockheed Martin position is a percentage point, 1.5%.
Oh,
So it's really not a needle mover at the end of the day. Even if
Can I
this is
just
going
ask
to,
this now? Why even keep it at that point?
so that's exactly it. Good question. What I was going to get at was that the reason I picked the stocks that I picked, because there's a number of good opportunities out there, and at any point there's pockets of value.
right.
You could pick straws between this one or this one. It's not from a return standpoint that this is going to outperform in my portfolio and drive it to new heights. But there's an element to me of when I open my brokerage account or when I'm looking on Blossom every day. I said it like plain and
Yeah.
simple. Just seeing the two ETFs was like, I need something else there. And for me, that's where it came down to, was whether it's, a Disney or a Nike or a Starbucks, what is that company that just for you is like brings you a little joy into the portfolio? That is
Yeah.
actually the bigger determining factor as to why I chose what I did. Because like you said, Ari, the 1% position is not going to make or break me, whether it's in a positive or a negative. But it does just provide a little more character to the portfolio that makes
There's
me
just
that
there's
much
just
bigger.
something about it that you have an affinity for, right? It's like almost something you can't even explain. Like, why do you like why does a certain t-shirt stand out to you, or why does a certain hat stand out to you?
Yeah.
Why does a certain watch, stand out to you if you're a watch collector? I think I kind of think about it that way. Like, there's just something about some of these companies, whether it's a Zoetis or a Clear Secure or a Williams Sonoma, that I look at it and I think, man, there's just something about this that is so interesting to me. And I almost think of, in the same way that, like, the clothes that I'm wearing or whatever are an extension of myself and,
So
I don't
true.
know, my mind, I guess. I think the portfolio is kind of that too. It's like an extension of myself. It's another like creative way to put myself out there. And I think that's one of the big things that keeps me so heavily invested in individual companies, is because I think about it as is just like a part of myself. And hey, maybe someday, like down the road, I won't have as much of an interest in um, displaying myself that way, or you know what I'm trying to say. And if so, like I'll change. But for now, I'm like, man, this is fun. I like thinking about this stuff, and I like I like having these thoughts and maybe directing them towards this to see how it plays out, and if maybe how I want the world to turn out, or how I think it's going to turn out, will turn out to be that way. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying because I thought the exact same thing, Ryan. I still do, but maybe when there's a kid running
Yeah.
around tugging on your leg all day long, that might
Well, that's that's another thing I was going to say. I have no life. Okay, I've got time to do this. You two are very, very busy gentlemen. You know, jet setters, and so I understand the want to simplify things in this part of your life. But I have no life. This is what I got going on. So, but yeah, you're right. It'll be interesting to see how that changes in a couple of months.
You know, I'm just sitting here thinking, and again, this whole conversation has just kind of made my foot go down on the accelerator a little bit more, just a too fun portfolio. So Ari evolves yet again. But, I think about this individual stocks that I have. And when I really get down to the bottom of the why, I always, will close my eyes and I'm like, man, if I were in that boardroom, and I can say I own a sliver of this company, or I would like to run the company, or be a part of a team. I almost think for me, it makes me feel a part of that company. I have, again, as we first started off sharing, well, Brandon shared it, you have a fractional position in that company, a fractional say, if you will. And I don't know, there's something about that I like. And then I just like, someone asked me that, I think came in on Blossom actually, what made you pick the individual stocks, that you did, and how do you know which ones to pick? Because aren't you already invested in them in the S&P? And I was like, you're exactly right, but you're almost double dipping on it, and you can really place a bigger bet on it. And that's how I look at that. But I think really I'm going to be cutting my portfolio yet again. And I think, Ryan, at the beginning of the year, you called it when you said you'll probably get down to like 4 positions at some point. And I was like, I don't know. Well, I think that's happening now. But I don't know, Ron, I want to know from you, do you foresee yourself going down a similar route?
It's hard to say. I'm open to it. Like I said earlier, if I lose an interest in this stuff, or if it just gets to be too much to manage, then yeah, I have no problem going more into like SCHD or going more into VOO, these funds that I already do own. I'm totally fine with making them a larger portion of my portfolio. But yeah, I don't know. I like what I'm doing right now, and it's working for me. The returns are good. I'm learning a lot. I feel like that's another part to it. I feel like by just by diving headfirst into it, which as a brand new investor, maybe, in hindsight was not the best move, but it did force me to learn and learn quickly. And I think that that's one great benefit that I get from doing things the way that I've been doing them is it keeps me learning, and it allows me to apply what I'm learning. And I just don't think that I would have been exposed to a lot of the information and experiences that I have been if I had taken a different approach. For now, like that's something I care about. But if at some point I'm like, I'm good, I just want to kick my feet up and just let it do its thing and not have to worry about it, I'll definitely change. But I'm in it right now. I love it. I still love it. I love it more today than I did when I first started.
Ryan, that's what I love about you, man. And Brandon, I got to share this. Like Ryan, no matter what I've ever said on the deep end, or no matter what anybody ever says to Ryan has a strategy and he does not veer unless he wants to. And I think that's rare. That's very rare.
It's more practical for me to just check the time on my iPhone. It's always in my pocket. It's always there. It's so much easier to do that. Why would I wear a watch? I don't know. There's just something about it, man. There's just something that I love. Something I love about this. And I think we all have our own versions of that. These things that we're interested in, these things that make us tick. And this is one of mine for now. And it certainly would be more practical to not wear a watch, but I don't know. I think there's more to it than just practicality.
It looks freaking great on you, man. It looks great. Hold that wrist up real quick.
This is my Seiko Solar Diver. Today? And the thing about that, I don't buy expensive watches. I buy cheap watches. I have one nice watch, but the rest of my watches were either like hand-me-downs or like this watch was maybe $400. And I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. And I'm so excited about that. And this is another thing, like over time, it's going to patina. It's going to fade a little bit. It'll get some character from the dings and stuff like that. And you might think that makes it less worth wearing, but I think it's the opposite. I think it makes it more worth wearing.
I would agree. Look, we're coming up on an hour, and there's one actually key thing I wanted to talk about tonight because I'm getting amped up about it, and we have the right man on with us to talk about it. So, Brandon, I'm going to pass the mic over to you in a hot second. The question I want to pose to you is, what in the world is the Blossom Tour all about, and why should people be amped up about it? Why should people go?
Well, I'll first say, Ryan, I'll get it out there. I hate watches. You'll never catch me wearing a watch, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Rolex. I don't care what the watch is. I just find them extremely uncomfortable.
That's fair.
I almost got one actually. So someone almost convinced me to get a Garmin to track my sleep and health and the steps and whatnot. I ended up getting an Oura ring, so that's
okay
new for me. It's a little interesting, but just putting it out there. Ari, thank you for the spotlight. Yeah, I mean, if for anybody that listens here to the deep end, I'm gonna assume you have an interest or somewhat of a passion in investing, and we put on these events. This will be our third year doing them now. Essentially, bringing the online investors and people you would connect with online on YouTube, on Instagram, on Blossom, basically bringing those online investor connections into real life, right, in person. And it started out. I don't even know how or why we started with such a bold idea, but yeah, 3 years ago we're going to tour across Canada and hit all the major cities, that being Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, where I'm from, Toronto. There are other cities here in Canada, but those are kind of like the big four. We're going to try and host the biggest and best in-person events that we can. And it was an absolute smash out of the park. Like, we sold out every venue. It was obviously more smaller and intimate the first year around, but people loved it. And they loved the opportunity to, I guess, have the same discussions that you'd have on Blossom or on Reddit or in the comment section here, but instead you're meeting face to face with people who are other dividend investors or other index fund investors or traders, whatever it may be. So yeah, we have what's called our Blossom Investor Tour. This year we're doing the same stops in Canada, but also 3 big ones in the US, which is New York, Chicago, and then LA. Obviously, Blossom, I mean, you guys we're growing in the US, and we've met so many incredible people and a ton of user base out there now who we want to give the opportunity to hang out with us. So yeah, other than that, it's literally just a big in-person event where you get good food, drinks. We have some pretty cool venues for the US ones in particular. We're doing them at the NASDAQ. So literally, I'm not the one organizing it. So whoever's pulling the strings behind the scene have done awesome this year. We have the NASDAQ for the New York event, SIBO, so the Chicago Board of Options Exchange, is where we're hosting the Chicago one. LA is more of an intimate rooftop, kind of nice sunset vibes. Toronto is our big flagship one in Canada. We're taking over the Rogers Center, so where the Blue Jays play. Obviously, we're not filling out the entire, I don't know how many seats they have, but yeah, someone figured out that you could rent out a whole section of the stadium. So when we have our presentations, because a big part about these events is it's networking and it's food and drinks and photos and having fun, but we also have panels throughout the evening, so you can learn about topics like dividends or ETFs, whatever that may be. Yeah, we're gonna have a huge section of the bleachers or grandstands essentially packed with investors, and to my understanding, the speakers are going to be on the dugout, so literally sitting on the Blue Jays dugout with the big jumbotron, streaming everything. Yeah, it's going wild. And these events we do not for profit, FYI, so I think it's actually very important to mention that. I mean, we're not trying to sell tickets to make Blossom a bunch of money. We aim to run these costs as a break even, and in reality, after the sponsor dollars come in, after the tickets come in, it is usually a loss out of our pocket as a business, but it's well worth it to bring the community together and bring investors together. So yeah, all that to say, we kick off the events actually this month. So we kick off the Canadian leg in 2 weeks. We're out in Calgary and Vancouver, and then the US ones are in October. And I know we've been chatting, Ari, I know you're, like you said, jet setter, but we're trying to work something out here to see whether you'll be in town. Ryan, again, fair beans for you. You sit this one out, which makes total sense.
Ryan has a legit reason. I don't have a reason.
Last year I said this year. This year I'm saying next year, and I have every intent on being there next year.
Hey, I'll
As
believe it
long
when
as
I
it's
see it.
not on a cruise ship, Brandon.
Someone get this guy a watch. We got to clock him on it.
Yeah,
I'll believe it when I see it, right?
Yeah.
I know. That's fair.
But yeah, all that to say, if anyone is tuning in or interested, like, yeah, we're in your city, come out for the event. I think people are pleasantly surprised. It actually is the highlight of the year for us as a business, and then the users, the members of the Blossom community. They're asking, when's the tour? When's the event? When are you coming to our city? So for the ticket price, which I think they range about 45 bucks. I think LA's even like 25 bucks. So they're not overly expensive. That comes with food, drink, merch, all sorts of fun stuff. Like, it's the value you get for the ticket is far beyond what it is. And yeah, I'd say if we're in your city, come out, see what it's all about. And I'd like to think anyone listening would have an awesome time.
Oh yeah, I know, guys. Too. Russ is going to be at the Chicago one. PPC
He's
Ian is also
speaking
going to be
there.
at Chicago.
That's
PPC
right.
Ian is also going to be, I think, in Toronto, if I'm have that correct.
We got a huge yeah, we try to bring out, like, I guess, who we believe are some of the best educators and speakers, people in our network. And yeah, a couple of the names you mentioned there, people I've watched and I've personally adored for many years, along with you guys. And in Canada, I don't know if you guys follow the Canadian scene, but our big headliners in Toronto is like Ben Felix is a massive creator here in Canada.
Hmm.
He's everywhere. He's a very knowledgeable and great educator. And then the Plain Bagel is another one who's big speaker. These guys are big time. They're pretty much as big as you get when it comes to the Canadian
Yeah.
content scene. So yeah, regardless of what event it is, we try our best to pack it out with high quality education. And yeah, the names you mentioned will be there, and hopefully, Ari, we get your name up on one of the big posters here very shortly. But
I'm super stoked. Like I said, I'm fired up on all cylinders to try to make this thing work. I'm like waiting on some business trips. I know there's so much. The end of the year is going to be nuts. But I want to make Blossom a part of it. And even if I'm not going on those trips, I'm going to try it. With everything I have to be there, to attend. Brandon and I were speaking a little earlier today, and it's just like I was just telling him, like, I freaking love Blossom. I love the community. I love the fire and the energy, and so I want to feel it real time, live, not just on a screen on the deep end or typing something, post on Blossom. So I will hopefully be there, and I can't commit just yet because once I commit, as everybody knows, I typically follow through within the next 48 hours. But I'm like 99% there.
I'm standing by. Eagerly awaiting the decision. So I check my phone. I'll be checking my phone.
Yeah,
Well, guys, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you read my mind, man. Ryan, you want to let Brandon do the honors of taking us out?
No, he let us in. We'll take it to the end
Too much
zone.
pressure.
We'll take it to the end zone. He's our guest. We'll let him kick his feet up.
All right, Ryan,
guys, this has been
take us home.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. It's been a fantastic episode. Thank you, everyone who's still tuning in. Looks like there's 53 of us here in the stream. Brandon, man, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. It was awesome to chat with you. It really has been too long. And also thanks to you and the rest of the Blossom team just for all of the support here on the deep end. It really means a lot. And it's been a pretty perfect fit for us. And I hope you guys feel the same. And we're having a lot of fun doing this. And it's a lot more fun being able to do it with you guys. So thank you for everything, man. It really means a lot.
Hey, I'll wrap it up. It is a no-brainer, literally a no-brainer to support you guys. I mean what I said at the top, how much I value, what I see in you guys. And I remember doing my research on the deep end when I first heard about it and came across it. And one thing I'll say is that the community you guys have built here in the deep end, whether it's tuning into these live streams, in the comments, the funny little quirks and jokes, that's something that doesn't get replicated too easily. There's a magic there, and I see it. I'm a believer, so it's a no-brainer. You guys keep doing what you're doing, and we'll happily be here alongside of you guys.
Thank you, man. Guys, hope all of you have a great day. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you in the next one. Have a great day.